Seems fair to me.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Well, thank you very much for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook. Hope you and your family are doing well in these wet weather times. And before the hour is over, Wendy and I will talk to Jason Kander, the former Secretary of State in the state of Missouri, who faced some difficult mental health challenges as the result of serving in Afghanistan. He'll join us, and we hope you join us as well. Let's meet the panelists who are about to discuss the primary results from this past Tuesday, starting with the media veteran herself, Wendy Wiese from KTRS, Mr. Bill McClellan from the Post-Dispatch, Ray Hartmann from Raw Story, Riverfront Times, and KTRS, and Alvin Reid from the St. Louis American. Well, Alvin, we'll start with you in the county council race on the Democratic side. Sam Page, the incumbent, easily defeated Jane Duker, who mounted a spirited challenge, but he's going to go on to the November finals. Let me ask you, what happened to Jane Duker? It's not as if there wasn't some problems with corruption inside the county executive's office. It's not like he had the most effervescent personality, right? Doesn't seem to have a long list of accomplishments. What happened here?
Well, I think that people appreciated, A, I guess the job he has done. Two, I think there was a lot more wind in the sails of Jane just from talk. I don't think it was ever really substance, or she ever really had, you know, that many votes. And then C, that one was over so early I didn't have to hang out really late. So I went by there. And I do have to say that my first stop was at Shamed Dogan's gathering at the Drury in Creve Coeur. And I talked to him about what his game plan would be to beat Sam Page. So I did not see his loss coming.
And he would have been a formidable candidate, I believe, against Sam Page. In terms of Jane Duker, Jane Duker is one of those people. She is accomplished in many areas, but I think that for people who, in this very busy age that we seem to be living in, she is more along the lines of somebody who is, as we say, inside baseball, in the weeds. You know, those of us who you know, make a living observing these things are aware of who she is. I just think in terms of, I think it was incumbency. I think that's,
well, and I think that makes a lot of sense, but don't you also think that he won because he didn't debate her? You
yes.
know, I think there's something to that.
Very much so.
It would have been closer, I think, but also Jane appears on 97.1 on a weekly basis with Mark Reardon on the Reardon Roundtable, and then she hosts the show, so she's got a pretty good following there. But all of those listeners are voting in the Republican primary, and
That's
she's
right.
also supported by like the Missouri restaurant owners as well as the police, and I bet you they're all voting in the Republican primary too.
That's a great point.
That is a great point.
And you know, the county's rolling along, and Sam Page, there might be some personnel problems, but overall, I mean, we're recovering from Steve Stenger still. So I thought Sam did an adequate job, and I didn't think that the problems you've mentioned really impacted people very much.
Well, and blame him. He didn't.
Right.
I think you hear people say it's all his fault. And I think voters in the county said, like, no, it's not all his fault. And then B, who cares?
Well, his campaign pretty effectively vilified Jane Duker for her association with the police officers, for those who are given to that way of thinking. And I think that, so I mean, that was kind of enough. And I also think that the Dr. Page has a lot of support in the medical community.
I'm just glad I didn't make a prediction, because
No, you did
I
not.
would not. In the words of a great American, who am I? Why am I here? No, Admiral Stockdale.
Stockdale.
No, I thought, you know.
Who's a great guy.
Look, my view is, the primary's over, you know, and I guess we can try to dissect it. I think, you know, for a first-time candidate, I think she ran a respectable race. I did think it would be closer because he didn't campaign, but he won. I mean, you just got to, he won fair and square, you move on.
Here's the answer to all this. We should have nonpartisan primaries.
I think so.
So the top two
Right.
can run against go to the final.
I don't know about that. I kind of like the political party.
I don't want to take that one chance for somebody to ask for the ballot that they want. And I think that is not necessarily a declaration that you always vote Democratic or that you always vote Republican.
Right.
But we need to narrow down. We do want Democrats running that are Democrats and Republicans running that are.
I'm fine with nonpartisan.
I hope
stuff.
that Jane Duker will run again in the future.
I agree.
I really
Well,
hope.
I will say,
And she was in the arena. She deserves some credit
Well,
for
it
that.
would be entertaining if candidates had to debate.
Well, they should.
Well,
to debate against Jane Duker would be a very difficult.
That would be
the
a
key is
very
not to
difficult job.
debate. And as Trudy Bush found out, Wendy Wiese, Trudy Bush didn't debate. Lucas Kunce wanted to do that. In fact, I don't think she gave many, if any, interviews. I could be wrong on that. Someone will correct the record. So she has never held elective office before, and now she's the Democratic Party's candidate for U.S. Senate. She'll be up against the Attorney General, Eric Schmidt, who has won statewide, and he got more votes than Vicky Hartzler and Eric Greitens combined. They came in second and third. Can she defeat him in November?
I think that the strategic decision to put Trudy Bush Valentine in the middle of this Senate race was actually pretty brilliant, because for people who are maybe they're pro-life Republicans, but they're just not in agreement with the way the Attorney General handled the pandemic or the mask mandates or the lawsuits or what have you, then she would be a fairly, I mean, she's an attractive candidate to independent voters, in my opinion.
I will say this. First of all, I think going forward, which, again, the primary's over, I'm a one-issue voter. And that is how are you going to vote the first day on who the majority leader of the Senate is. And she, in my mind, that's the future of democracy we're talking about. So I'm all in, and I will say this. I think, no, I am. I mean, primary's over. I wasn't for her, but I will say.
All of the problems she had, which you described so eloquently last week, have now disappeared?
Exactly, they have, because it's all about democracy. No, it is about, this is about a future of our democracy. I think it is. And I'll also say this, that I think the big factor is what John Wood, assuming he stays in the race, I think Trudy Bush Valentine, if he can get to close to double digits, which he may, if he stays true to his word, he said he was going to, he thinks Eric Schmidt is divisive, and I think he is the key. I do think that it matters greatly to the future of our republic that somebody not vote for Mitch McConnell, and that's my view, and I have no apology for that.
I hope that this Senate race doesn't determine much about the future of our republic, because I think that Eric Schmidt is more than just a formidable candidate. And this is Missouri. I mean, this is a state that Mike Parson beat Nicole Galloway. Josh Hawley beat Claire McCaskill. And I think Trudy Bush Valentine is a nice person and love nurses, and she seems smart enough. But I don't think that for the Democrats to win, they need a real break like Eric Greitens. And they didn't get it, and I don't think there's much chance.
I think John Wood could be their break.
The Democrats have to go to the polls, and they're not doing it.
Well,
Eric Schmidt had twice as many votes as Trudy Bush. Republicans voted about twice as many, 300,000 more Republicans voted in the primary than Democrats. 24% of the city of St. Louis, largely Democrat, came out to vote. 27% in the county. That was below Rick Stream's prediction of 35%. People have to get off the sofa.
Well, she was savaged by the progressive arm of the party on social media.
It was a primary.
That helped her. When
It's a primary.
Bernie Sanders endorsed Lucas Kuntz, that was good for Trudy Bush in the state of Missouri.
Totally agree, but will the progressives get behind Trudy Bush?
I hope so. I think they should.
Well, they're angry at Tashara.
Well, you know what?
Mayor Jones.
A great man, Richard Callum, thank you, said, Alvin, people like her. And there's something to that. And I said, like, you know what? I hear you. And, you know, it isn't about, she's got to go out state. She's got to convince people to vote for her out there. But she won votes all over the state.
She
and
did.
That, I did not
That's
think
right.
that was going to happen.
Well, you know
She
what?
won votes
When
all
your
over the state.
family gives away free beer at Grant's Farm for 50 years, that has a lasting effect on people's impression of your
entire state of Missouri.
No. I think in a world that we don't recognize from one 12-hour cycle to the next, a name that we recognized is important today.
And I will tell you this, you could talk all you want about the turnout in the primary, and again, I have no apology for that. I'm as going to be as much for Trudy Bush Valentine as anybody, because I really believe that we need the Democrats to win, and I'm not even a Democrat.
Well, what were you going to say?
What I was going to say is, I forgot what I was, Admiral Stockton. No, I do think that the, what was I going to say?
We'll get back to it.
Well,
All right.
if
We'll get back to it.
Donald-
We'll get back to it.
if
I want to say
Donald-
something.
I lost my train of thought.
Donald Trump had said some of the things about Trudy Bush that you did. You would have called him a bully.
No, Ray.
You would have called him a bully.
First of all,
Look,
I want to get you, Ray, because we've got to
okay.
move along. First of all, though,
I want to say about
you
the
took 2
turnout.
shots at Stockdale, and he was a great man.
I didn't
He was
take
a war
shots at him.
veteran.
This is
I didn't
self-deprecation.
take shots at him.
So let's-
Whatever. Hey,
Okay,
I
so
was
now-
talking about Kansas.
Okay.
You watch that
Okay,
Kansas.
we'll get to that.
But that's going to affect
coming up
turnout.
on our little docket
It's
here.
going to affect turnout.
Okay, what the heck and who the heck is Catherine Pinner?
Well,
She won the Republican primary for county executive, and handily, by 12 points. She got 56% of the vote. She's a complete unknown.
Right.
She had spent no money. She has 4 self-published books and a blog which says that COVID is a chance for the world elites to put microchips in us. Did she have some sort of secret under-the-radar QAnon vote that none of us know about?
No one knows. And to paraphrase, to honor Admiral Stockdale, it's a lot of Republicans are going, who is she and why is she here?
Why is she
I
here?
mean, because I don't think, well, first, it was one of the most really kind of stunning outcomes.
Yep.
And I guess any of us that think, oh, we know what we're talking about in the media, I mean, that was kind of humbling for everyone. And I think the reason, it's hard to be sure. I think among the reasons, first of all, I think the big one is Shamed Dogan's name is a bit of a problem just in a county that, you know, I happen to think the world of the guy. And he's a good man. I think he's got a good future. But in this particular race, his name is just not a good ballot name. Secondly,
It's not a good white name. Right?
okay. Well,
I mean,
okay.
let's be honest.
all right.
I mean, people look at the
Right.
ballot, and I thought our reporter, Nassim
Right.
Ben-Shabani, did a great job in his story. He understated. He didn't talk about, you know, the elephant in the room, that a lot of these people in the Republican primary weren't familiar with either candidate, and people are tribal, and they go, Shamed, Kathy, I think I'll take, you know.
No, that's a good point, but there's 2 other things. One, and being black is not an asset in a Republican primary in St. Louis County, full stop. You can make of it what you want. I don't know how big a fact. And then the third thing is, I think that's a factor. So I didn't say it was the
Do
factor.
you even know any Republicans in St. Louis County?
I do.
Who voted?
And I do, actually.
What did
And-
they say? Why did they vote for Kathy?
Okay, can I finish? The third that I think is really interesting is how many really right-wing Republicans did turn out to vote in the Senate race. And I think that may have been, that would not hew to Shamed Dogan's benefit. I think those 3 factors, however you want to sort them out.
I think people just didn't know either candidate.
Right.
I agree.
That's
And
what
so
I
they
think
looked
it
and
is.
said, well, I'll go with Kathy.
All right,
agree.
all right.
I think that's true because those of us in the media know Shamed Dogan, and he's
Right.
been on
No, he's a
your
great-
show.
he's a
He's
good
been on
guy.
CamWex. You've written about him. But you know what? Most people I know these days don't even follow local news.
yeah, that's
They know
true.
about Trump. They know about Roe v.
Yeah.
Wade.
That's
But
very
you ask them
true.
about the county council, and
I think it's
No,
fair.
that is
That's
true.
fair. I don't.
That's
well,
very true.
finally some agreement.
By the way, if I ran as a Republican, I think I could win the nomination. I'd get beat, but I think if I just one day said like,
You know, that's a good idea.
But you're talking
no,
about.
I never
manager.
I would never
Oh,
do
come
it.
You
on.
absolutely would, and you just planted a seed in somebody's ear, I guarantee
Okay.
you.
We
I
should,
guarantee
okay.
with
Wait,
regard
now,
to the
what about
Republican
Trump?
candidate, we should mention that she sort of is an anti-vaxxer worried about like microchips. I
That's
mean,
what he just
I,
said,
well,
yeah.
I was going to say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear, because I'll be voting for Sam Page finally. I can't
You
believe
might want to
it.
listen to the show. It's pretty
Oh, I'm
good.
sorry. It's good. I was just listening. to myself.
Ray, Trish
hear you say it.
Gunby,
Okay, yes.
state rep.
Yeah.
She won the
Right.
Democratic nomination for the House seat in the 2nd District. That would be, of course, the seat that Ann Wagner has. Ann Wagner got 65% of the vote. You think, however, because of what's going on in Kansas, et cetera, that Gunby has a chance.
I absolutely do, and I think this, this isn't a wishful thinking thing. This was an historic vote. I mean, there's nobody, including the Democrats in Kansas, that saw this coming. A 19-vote majority on the pro-choice side, and you say, well, it's Kansas. Kansas was exactly 1 point different than Missouri on Trump. It was 14.5 for him there, 15.5 here. The states are not that dissimilar, and it was shocking. And I will tell you, I tried to bring it up before, with the turnout with regard to Trudy Bush Valentine, who is pro-choice, it will help her in a way. You could say, oh, no, I don't want to hear about the history on this issue. For the last 50 years, this has been an issue that motivated Republican voters who call themselves pro-life. Now it is absolutely turned, and I think Ann Wagner, you can say what you want about it. Last time she was unopposed, but this is the worst turnout, worst showing she's had in all 5 of her re-elections, where fully a third of her own party didn't vote for her in the primary. I think she's vulnerable.
Well, it was 4-person
And
race.
Trish Gunby is
65% is pretty good. Okay.
65% is very
Trish Gunby is a moderate Democrat.
Okay.
I'm no longer a big Ann Wagner fan at all, but I think that, Missouri voters, even in the county, have a tradition of voting against positions they support. I mean, it's like people supporting the Republicans even though they're union people, or they need Medicare, but they're still voting for the Republicans. So I think, maybe this is a different issue.
I think it's different. I think this is
It's a
different.
different issue.
Okay.
And I've been out to Lawrence. I've been in Overland Park during this, the campaign period, and the no signs were just they were everywhere. And I mean, in conservative Overland Park, liberal, Douglas County, if there is a liberal part, it's Lawrence. So there was something to that, and there is something to that. Okay, and 70% of the people who voted in Kansas were women.
Well,
That's
and
gotta tap into that.
And
Yep.
this has
Good point.
definitely energized the younger
Yes.
voters. There's no doubt about that, in a way, and at a time when I think maybe some of the pro-life soldiers, if you will, are getting a little tired. Maybe they're taking it for granted that, with what happened at the federal level, that the state levels will follow, their own state levels
Oh,
will follow.
no. I think it's what I said last week.
Yeah.
It all matters as who goes to the polls.
Yeah.
Democrats have been blocking streets and marching and wearing T-shirts and waving at the television cameras, while the Republicans have worked the system.
Well,
and in
except for-
Kansas, the Democrats figured it out.
Well, okay. All right. Well, keep in mind that, Joe Biden is the president because the people that were sitting out in the street and wearing T-shirts actually got up and voted.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
no,
on
no,
a
no,
lighter
no.
note-
But on that,
on a lighter
in
note,
2020, Republicans actually did pretty well if you don't include the White House.
What else counts but the White House? Okay.
Supreme Court, as we found out.
Well, but that,
Right.
That's where the action is.
Well,
Elections
on a
have
lighter
consequences.
note, I voted for Trudy and a Trish in the same election. If you ever told me that would come true.
That's a good
Okay,
point.
how about a Corey? Bill McClellan, Corey Bush showed that she is a force of nature, easily defeating Steve Roberts, who most people consider to be a pretty solid, plausible candidate and all that. Well, in her second time, she got 70% of the vote, right? Pretty impressive. I think it's because she's working all the time and she gets her name in the paper all the time.
Well, I mean, it's not only an incumbent, but she's obviously very popular with her people who are fervent supporters. And I think that the Roe v. Wade thing had a lot to do with Corey's supporters, even though Steve Roberts is pro-choice. Corey Bush was out there, on national TV, and she spoke eloquently about how she was a single woman who had an abortion herself. And, I mean, the timing was bad for Steve Roberts. And Cori Bush, like you say, she's a force. And her supporters, you know, they really carried on. And I went to, I was at Steve's election gathering, and everybody was kind of in the early on.
They kind of knew.
Downcast.
Yeah,
there wasn't much excitement.
She is electrifying. I mean, she really is an electrifying candidate in her district. I think it's hers until she decides that she wants to run for higher office.
I'm in the first.
Well, absolutely.
I'm sorry. I voted for it, but I didn't even think it was a race. I didn't get involved in it because I just didn't think. I mean, I was for her all the time. I've always said on this show, she's authentic, which is the thing I like. Even when I don't agree with her, she's authentic. She's not managed, and she believes what she believes. And I never thought it was going to be even close. I mean, we all know don't listen to me, but on that one, I didn't think it was even ever.
Well, I was kind of like, look, she's going to win, but if you'd have told me she was going to get like 69.5%,
I wouldn't surprise.
I'm like, no.
Right. I thought that there was enough.
Okay, here's why I think.
I wasn't surprised.
What I think is going on right now is you have guys like Eric Schmidt, who is brilliant at getting attention, mostly by these lawsuits and, you know, posing with a blowtorch or whatever. She does the same thing. Her voting record is crazy when you consider she voted against the ban on against the infrastructure, against Boeing in her district.
That's not crazy.
Against the ban on oil from Russia after Brittany Griner is like held captive there, and Russia is killing Ukrainian women and children, and she's not voting to sanction them, and she gets 70% of the vote.
I agree. I just don't think she's serious enough about things. I mean, she's passionate, but, you know, I don't know if professionalism is the right word, but I thought I'd rather see somebody in there who wants to get things done. And, but obviously,
she does. She just doesn't want the things that you want. I mean, she wants things that are different. She's not. She's serious.
Like, I might have not voted like that, but it's like, hey, it's going to win anyway, so I'm going to make a point. There's something to that. And then, two, hey, she won 70% of the vote in her district.
Right.
And I don't, you know, okay, the guy who got 30% is more professional. He got his butt whooped.
I wanted somebody who would support the Democratic president.
Yeah, and I get that. On the other hand, I will say she voted. I like the Russian vote. I don't understand, but it makes me nuts when people say, "How dare you vote against Boeing when it's in your district?" You know, a lot of people, if she would have voted against Boeing in another district, then she should vote against them in this
How
district.
about the infrastructure?
Well,
I don't want to get into it
disagreed with her. I mean, hey, you know, speaking
how about
of things,
defunding the police?
Hey, you know what? Did anybody notice?
Yeah, I will say this. I think she's similar to Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley is the only senator who voted against
95-1.
Right, admitting Finland and Sweden to NATO. But you know what? Because he's the one, he gets headlines written about him all around the nation.
But he's statewide, and that makes him national. I mean, Cori Bush gets national press, but
so does Hawley.
But Josh Hawley is not going to get 70% of the vote, even in Missouri.
Josh Hawley got spanked by Tom Cotton of all people.
I like Cori Bush more than I like Josh Hawley.
Yeah.
So there you go.
We knew that.
Well, Bill McClellan, I want to ask you, a report from the St. Louis Business Journal says that the city of St. Louis wants 2/3 of the $510 million settlement with Rams owner Stan Kroenke. And yet, most people thought it would get 1/3, sharing it with St. Louis County and the Regional Sports Authority.
Well, I think it's probably just an ask. I mean, you ask for more than you expect, and I think the city needs more of the share than the county. I wouldn't break it up into thirds, but if I were running things, I would say, we'll give you more than 1/3, but we want you to promise to spend it on police and garbage. Well, let's get some basic services here, and I don't think that the mayor understands the urgency of like what's happening downtown.
She will.
With the crime, and
I think she does.
And I think the city should get more than 1/3. But I hope
but
they
not
spend
2/3.
Yeah,
but the city population 300,000, St. Louis County population million.
But as the city collapses, it hurts the entire region. So I have no problem with the
and
city
the team
getting more
played
than 1/3.
in the city. And whatever the cost was of the police and
All of the other.
services and all that. In those early years, the Rams weren't paying rent at Matthews Dickey and all that. You know, which if you're not paying rent, that means you're not paying sales tax. The city took a hit. Okay, I think they deserve more. Maybe not 66%.
Yeah, not too.
But I always thought they should get more. So
I'm opposed. The reason I wrote the thing, I got beat up last week, I don't care, on the mental health clinics was I am opposed to making this about cuts. I think we need to think as a community. This is money that fell out of the sky. I came up with an idea. I haven't heard any better one. Today, Greater St. Louis. Well, let me finish. Today, Greater St. Louis is out there saying, we need to invest in downtown infrastructure. It's like, that is not the answer.
And public safety.
And you know what? You know, the people,
no
they're fighting. Those same
safety
people
and the
that are calling
perception.
for it are fighting with the downtown residents over control of downtown because they want more 24/7 kinds of solutions downtown. My point is this. This community needs to think, and whether you like my idea or not, at least it was a city-county idea, and it was something different and constructive.
Well, we got to save downtown.
Yeah,
if
but you
we
know,
don't do
the
something-
same people talk about saving it.
No, I'm
Okay, we're out of time, guys.
If we-
Unfortunately, that's all she wrote for this edition. Let's see what the viewers had to say about last week's program, shall we? I'm not disappointed that Goldschmidt and Arenado couldn't play. I'm glad that they aren't able to play due to their choices. I'm disappointed that they weren't vaccinated. That from Emery Cox. Thank you very much. Also from Twitter, we heard from Kyrock31. The number one criteria for expenditure of the settlement money should be something which is easy to audit, and the money has to be traceable. Because I don't trust current politicians to waste it, or worse, funnel it to their cronies. You can always write us, care of KETC, 9PBS, 3655 Olive Street, 63108. Don't forget those emails at donnybrook@9pbs.org. And, of course, you can follow us on Twitter and tweet. Use the hashtag DonnybrookSTL. And you can follow us on your favorite podcast source, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, and TuneIn. That concludes the first portion of our program. But on Next Up, we'll talk to former Missouri Secretary of State Jason Kander, who has just written about his mental health challenges and how he's battling them right now. That's next. Wendy and I will pose the questions. Hope you join us.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.